let's take a look at one of the best places to go and look around, which is the OWASP website. OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project, and it has just tons of information on security for web apps. And one of the best places to start is their 10 web application security risks. Maybe I should stop talking. Anyway, this is their top 10
web application security risks.
Yeah, he can read, I can't. English, hard. So there are the top 10 here. I want to touch on these just kind of not hugely in depth, but just talk about what they are so that you can kind of get an idea of what it is we're trying to dig into here. So one of the big ones is injection, primarily SQL injection. That's where you've got form or something on your website somewhere where users can enter information, and you pass it in, and that information gets inserted into a query somewhere and run, and it's not properly protected, and so people can put all kinds of crap into that text field, including code, JavaScript code, and all kinds of stuff. It can get really nasty.
They can escalate their permissions. They could query other types of data, etc.
Right, and it's really easy to do. And if you watch, if you've ever looked into hackers and how they approach getting into a website, this is one of the first things they try.
Which is why this is the number one.
Right.
And it's been number one for like a really long time.
Right. So this is a very important thing to protect against. Broken authentication. So this will include things like CSRF, cross-site request forgery, and other things that allow hackers to use authentication holes to get into your site and fake authentications, basically. A lot of times it's using cookies that are passed through the sessions that aren't protected. Ruby, like Rails, for instance, has CSRF protection tokens that it puts in automatically. I have seen a developer take those out for some unknown reason, but don't. They're there for a reason. Sensitive data exposure. This has more to do with database security, mostly. However, you want to be careful about what you're displaying to users. You want to make sure that you don't accidentally display sensitive information. XML external entities shouldn't ever be a problem because everybody stopped using XML and uses JSON now, right? So moving on, right? That's just not even a problem. Why is it even up there? No, because lots of people are still using XML. Blech. Anyway, the best way to protect against this is use JSON.
Is don't use it.
Yeah, right.
Well, but the problem is that it is indeed external entities you're dealing with, because like my code, I never use XML, but I have to use it sometimes when I'm communicating with an old API. Right.
Yeah, if everybody would stop using it, this wouldn't be a problem anymore. But a lot of sites, a lot of legacy sites running on XML, because before JSON, that was the thing. And JSON isn't that old, relatively speaking. Not nearly as old as me. So anyway, we're stuck with it. But, you know, if you're using XML or you're accessing an external site that uses XML, passes you XML, you need to watch out for this stuff. Broken access control is basically, I authenticate into your site, and I'm supposed to have limited permissions, but you haven't locked down some parts of your site, and so I can get into other things like admin parts and things and not.
Yeah, so it's an authorization problem, not necessarily an authentication problem.
Right.
So it's you trust that user, but not to do something
right
they're doing.
Yeah, like I may be a user, but I shouldn't be an admin, but you've forgotten to lock down your admin section from me. Security misconfiguration. This has more to do with server stuff, for the most part. the cloud storage and the front ends.
Although there is probably some framework configurations like Rails. Sure. Rails is pretty good, but there may be other frameworks where you're expected to configure certain defaults that are insecure. I don't know.
Right. Well, and certain things like there are some HTML headers that you should put in that have to do with security configuration and stuff. But this one it primarily is going to be dealing with server type things, as well as making sure that your frameworks and stuff are up to date and not, running a 4-year-old version with 800 CVEs in it. Cross-site scripting, XSS, that's basically where somebody can execute scripts from another site on your site, and it gets a little goofy to try to explain, but it basically it's kind of like site spoofing, where they get into a lot of times using like SQL injection or something. They'll rewrite part of your site to then when somebody clicks on a link, they send them to a site that's not yours. And then they start collecting information from them. Insecure deserialization is kind of like SQL injection, except it's not using SQL. It's using serialized objects. So again, you might have an open form on your site that isn't properly that goes to an object instead of an SQL statement, and you're not protecting against deserializing and serializing that object, and so code can be run. Using components with known vulnerabilities. So this is, making sure your stuff is up to date, your gems, your frameworks, your plugins, that you're not running out of date things that have CVEs identified in them. So just keep your stuff up to date. Insufficient logging and monitoring. Again, this has more to do really with server security. So we're not going to hit on this a lot, but you kind of want to log and monitor what's hitting your server and that kind of stuff, and keep track of, is somebody trying to do DOS attacks, or is somebody trying to do brute force password guessing or stuff like that. You can detect that stuff, and there's a lot of logs and monitor tools that you can use. But it's
also applicable to code. If, like we were talking about exception handling last week, and if you get a hint through like a bunch of exceptions are firing because someone's trying things, then that's something from a code basis you need to investigate and be aware of.
True.
I find it interesting where it says, quote, most breach studies showed time to detect a breach is over 200 days.
Yikes.
Typically detected by external parties rather than the internal processes or monitoring.
Right. And that's one of the reasons that's one of the big reasons that we're doing this show tonight, this topic. We wanted to do this because if you start using some of the things we're talking about tonight, you will find the security vulnerabilities before bad guys will. And that's way better for your company. I think, and maybe your company's different than most, but I would think so. So another thing I want to look at from OWASP that I really like, and I've used quite a bit, and I actually bookmarked this thing, is their cheat sheet series. This thing is fantastic. It's got a crap ton of cheat sheets in it that's all about security stuff. So like, here's the cheat sheet for Rails, and it talks about, SQL injection and what that looks like in Rails and how to prevent it, and XSS and all that stuff. But they have, stuff for .NET. They have authorization talks. They have error handling, which we talked about last time, but not this kind of error handling, really. They've got .NET security. So they've got all kinds of stuff here that you can look at. So I would highly recommend just having a bookmark to this site and referencing it once in a while. You're not going to want to use all of these. Like if you're not a .NET programmer or you're not a Rails programmer, you won't use that cheat sheet. But there's a lot of just good generic, general level security information in here. So highly recommend. By the way, all the stuff we're talking about tonight, we put links in the description. So they're already there. If you're watching this live on YouTube, you can already get to those links. And
they'll also be on the website.
Yeah, they'll be on the website. And we will try to do more of that going forward, getting links out in the descriptions before the show, so that if you want to go check this stuff out while we're talking about it, you can. All right, so anything else about OWASP that you like, that you want to talk about?
Not really. I mean, really, it's understanding each of these and what they mean and how they're going to impact the code that you write. And, I would definitely consider it from the priority, because the number one priority, because of its danger, is these, the injection or the SQL injection. So looking at that, the second is broken authentication, making sure that your authentication is sound, you have sufficient test coverage of what you're doing, as well as you are confident in any libraries you are using, etc.
Right.
So basically, I would just become familiar with it and dig into each one.
Yeah. OWASP is not like a cover to cover type website. It's one of those reference books that you want to keep on your shelf. So it just, if you're doing any kind of web app development, you really should have a bookmark here.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.